There you are. Welcome to Lunch for the Soul. I'm Melissa Wilson with Fox 26 News. I'm a morning news anchor, also a medical reporter. And this next 20 minutes is dedicated to lifting you up, opening up your soul, sharing a testimony of faith with an amazing couple. You are going to love them the second you meet them because they have quite a testimony to share. So I want to bring in right now, there they are, Marion and Kimberley. Hello. Welcome to Lunch for the Soul.
Hello.
Thank you for having us.
Yes. Well, I want to go back and get everybody up to date with what happened to you all because you went through a very dramatic situation when Marion suffered a very dangerous heart attack. So why don't you guys tell me in your own words what happened?
I'll let Kim handle this one since she's the one that went through more of the trauma at the time than I did.
Yeah. So February the 11th, 2017, we had pretty much a normal day before. Right about midnight, Marion rolled out of our bed and hit the floor. And I thought he had just knocked himself unconscious. So I went over to try to figure out what was wrong with him. And I realized that he wasn't breathing and his eyes were open, but they weren't moving. And so I immediately called 911 and they ordered me to begin CPR. He was defibrillated in our home, and they transported him to our local hospital, Northeast Memorial Hermann. And after they worked on him for a little while, they realized he was too sick for them. So they picked him up on Life Flight and transported him down to Memorial Hermann at the Texas Medical Center, where they pretty much as soon as he landed, he coded again. By this point, he had been dead for about 19 minutes. They got him back, and by the time I got down there, they were saying he's not going to make it. If he does survive, he's going to be significantly brain damaged. Mm-hmm. And so we arrived. Our families were there together, and we began to pray over him with a chaplain from the hospital. We pretty much know when the chaplain comes in, it's game over. You know, they're not coming back. And right after we prayed over him, I looked over across the room at him and his eyes had popped open, which is exactly what they said was not happening. And I called his name and he rolled his head towards the sound of my voice. And I knew he was going to be all right. They ended up putting him on complete life support. He was on a ventilator. He was on ECMO and different things they tried to do. We ended up getting an LVAD for him. So a left ventricular assist device. And as soon as he got that, he just bounced right back. And actually 5 years ago today, we brought him home from the hospital, which was 29 days after the man died in my house. Oh. So that was pretty much a miracle. And the fact that he has no more brain damage than he had before is the other miracle.
I love you keep a sense of humor in this. You think about about 19 minutes and the catastrophic damage that could have been done to your brain. I mean, I'm going to call it a miracle. Is that what doctors called it to you guys? Because it's remarkable and almost unheard of.
Well,
Yes.
Unfortunately, in the medical world, a lot of doctors don't want to say the word miracle anymore. I always told them the one thing that you guys didn't factor in when you talk about statistics and everything is the GOD factor. Mm-hmm. That, something I didn't really recall until farther after I lost about 2 weeks of memory. But the one thing I did tell my wife is people always ask me, did you see anything? Yes, I did. I saw my father, who had passed at that time 13 years ago. I found myself, I don't know if this was during the time that I was being defibrillated, during the time I was being resuscitated. I found myself in a what you would call a all white, as in white chairs, white everything. I was in an airport. People were lined up at the different terminals, and I was being pushed along by my dad, who told me that, son, you're very, very sick. You're very ill, but you're going to make it, and I'm here when it's your time. So as they were loading me onto what I remember as a Air France Concorde, because it was the fastest way to get me to wherever I needed to be, which I guess might have been when they were life flighting me. Then I woke up, and I believe that's whenever my family and my wife were interceding in prayer for me and calling out my name in prayer, that I heard them speaking my voice like Jesus calling Lazarus and saying, this is not your time. And my dad told me, he's there, he's waiting, but it's not your time yet. So
I have
I
so
feel
many
okay, and I am okay. As far as you get when you have an LVAD and you're waiting on transplant, I have lived a very a much more normal life than a lot of LVADers who are waiting on a transplant get to live.
Yes.
I've been blessed to interview a lot of people who have been in similar situations. Well, not a lot, but maybe 5 people who've been in a similar situation as you, as with maybe they died during an operation or they were in a bad car wreck and came back to life. And all of them had a similar but a little bit different story. As far as being able to see your dad, some people have told me that their loved one was a lot younger and looked really healthy. Other people tell me it was an image of them. It was like a bright light. What was your experience of seeing your dad? Did he look like the last time you saw him, or what was that like for you?
Yeah, he looked a lot like the last time I saw him before he passed. My dad was very ill. He had leukemia. He was on a ventilator when he passed. So it wasn't that image of him. It was him I remember him kind of in his prime. Not, the way I remember him as a healthy man.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my dad he was an Army Ranger, 26-year veteran. He was, very, to me, was always a man's man. A good, godly man. He was like my best friend.
Right.
Growing up. So it was very, it tears up every time I talk about my dad because he meant so much to me and
That's okay. I get it. And, a lot of people may say or question, well, were you dreaming? But when you are a person of faith, I'm sure you believe that you were perhaps in heaven for a few minutes. Is that your belief and your thought?
Well, my belief is, of course, that once you enter heaven through the gates, kind of like
you're there.
Minutes in heaven, there's no coming back. Once you see the Shekinah glory of God, which is what it says, when you see the face of God, you're not returning.
Mm-hmm.
I believe, like I said, I saw people lined up at terminal gates, basically getting on planes. So to me, maybe that was my mind's way of saying, these are the people that are actually getting on planes to their final destination, wherever that might be. But, people ask me that, and I talk to my pastor and I talk to many people, and I there was never any fear. There was never I never had that. Some people talk about those near-death experiences where they had fear and they heard. I'd never had that. All I felt was at peace. And my dad being there, probably because in my life, he was the one I always went to when I had difficulties. And, even to this day, I was, I miss my dad. And I'm like, I know my dad would know what to tell me to do.
But I think also because Marion put his faith in Jesus when he was very young, and so did I. So we knew we could call out to Jesus to help us. And the whole time when Marion was in the hospital, I was praying that, one, that his survival would be a testimony of the truth that Jesus does exist. He is here for us. He lived and he died and he came back. And if you could take this man and bring him back from something so horrific, we could use that for good. And I would not wish this experience on anybody, nobody. But so much good has come from something so miserable. And the other thing I was praying throughout the entire experience was that the people who were working on him would have supernatural abilities, that they would be working as the hands and feet of our great healer, God, our creator, that they would just know exactly what to do. And clearly they knew exactly what they were doing. And really, he exceeded every expectation. One of my favorite things about the whole experience, because got lots of great stories about the whole experience, but there was one particular doctor who we just love to death. He was telling us that, hey, what are your goals now that you've gotten this LVAD? What is your goal going to be? And I had told Marion, I think the night before, I would love it if you would be home for my birthday. And so he relayed this to the doctor, and the doctor's like, oh yeah, sure. Whatever. He came home 5 days before my birthday.
Oh my goodness. How about that? Oh, I love it. Now, I want to talk a little more about the LVAD, and we see the sign behind you that says pray for Marion, and there's a reason for that. So you have that, you mentioned earlier a little bit about what it is. So it's a heart pump that's making sure that you are safe, making sure your heart needs to do what it needs to do, but you can only use that for so long. So you're in desperate need of a heart transplant. So our particular prayer for anyone out there who prays is for you to get your new heart.
Yes. Typically speaking, an LVAD, a type 2, if you look, because her being a librarian, we've looked statistically speaking, they run an average of 8 years before you have to get a pump exchange, which means them having to go in, take the pump that's currently in there out and replace it, because it is a metal turbine that's running 24 hours a day. It's going to wear out. I'm right at 5 years right now. So technically, on average, I have about 3 more years left in the pump. However, on average, if you look at statistics again, a O positive heart takes a waiting time of 5 to 6 years, and I'm at a 3-year mark on the wait list. So I'm right at that 3 and 3. So which is going to happen first, the pump or the transplant? If I end up having to get a pump exchange, then I have to be put back on the inactive list while my chest recovers from the surgery. And every time they crack my chest to do any type of, it increases the risk of complications further down the road. So if I have to have a sternal break again for a pump exchange, I got to wait 6 months, and it just increases the chance of something going wrong when I actually get the transplant again, because they're going to then have to break my chest again for the 3rd time. Yeah. So every time they got to cut me open and open my chest, obviously, it just increases the risk factor. So, at 3 years and basically 3 years left in the technical statistical life of my pump, both statistics say I have a 3-year before something major has to happen.
Well, we are praying for sure.
Yeah. The other complication with his particular case is the particular LVAD they put in him. They don't make that anymore. And so it would be an entirely different LVAD setup. So they would have to remove what he currently has and change the system entirely.
So it's a lot to go through.
I did speak to the people at the Memorial Hermann this last week about that or 2 weeks ago when I went to visit. They still keep the pump on hand. So right now there is a limited supply if I had to have an exchange now. But now 3 years from now, that's
right. That's something else. I want to talk about how appreciative you have been, and just immediately after going home from the hospital, you were already back in the hospital a day or two later, thanking the doctors. You got to go and go here to Life Flight. You got to thank all your first responders. You got to meet the officers and the firefighters. I mean, there was a whole crew of people working to keep you alive. And I love the fact that you took the time to go find them. What was that like?
Well, we haven't technically met our Life Flight crew. That Life Flight helicopter happened to be in our neighborhood, and we were doing like a show and tell. We're actually still working to try to get a hold of our Life Flight crew. They may or may not still be with the system, but pretty much, I think like 2 weeks after everything happened and we got him home, I was contacting our local EMS station, and so we got to meet with our EMS heroes first, and we actually remain really good friends with one of them. Her name is Sherry. She's awesome. And we've met with her several times since. We also met up with the firefighters who worked on him, the police. And we see our hospital team all the time. But 5 days after he came home, which again was actually my birthday, we went back upstairs and we just wanted everybody to see him and see, what a great success he is. I mean, he was weak, but we did it because we wanted them to be encouraged by his success.
Oh, yeah. And you're also paying it forward by helping so many patients, like this beautiful young lady. You've made such a difference in her life. Do you want to tell me about her?
Yeah.
I mean, Kiki, she is such a sweet little girl. I mean, when I first met her, I don't think she weighed 90 pounds soaking wet. But, we had been at the hospital, and like I always had to do pre-COVID, I would go up to the floor and talk to the nurses. and talk to the doctors just to let them see me walking and talking and interacting. And they're like, hey, you guys, there's a girl right down on the hallway. She just got out of bed. She's so depressed. She wasn't even 20.
I don't think she was quite 20 yet.
She wasn't even quite 20. She was a college student. And, they're like, do you mind talking to her? And we're like, yeah, we'd love to. And we got to meet her family and found out that they went to the same high school years apart.
Many years apart.
That we lived in the same town at the time. And we got to really get to know that family. And to this day, like I said, we're still close to her. In fact, we're trying to figure out, with her being a transplant patient, now that COVID's finally starting to subside again, to meet up and have lunch or dinner or something with her. We had one planned, and then COVID started to spike again, and she said that she just didn't feel safe with that, and so we put that aside. But she is such a little blessing, and she's paid it forward too.
Yes, actually, just this week she was at the hospital doing a pay it forward to all the people who work on her.
Right.
It sounds like she had some good mentors to learn from here, followed in their footsteps. Let's talk about what life is like for you. So some people could just go sit in their bedroom in a dark room and say, I can't deal with this. I'm carrying around 7-pound medical equipment everywhere I go. I'm overwhelmed. I'm on a transplant list. I don't know if I'm going to make it. I mean, that's a perfect pity party, but you just haven't done that. Can you help give us advice when we're all going through hard times? And everybody does. No one's exempt from it. No. About where you find that bright light in life to move forward and to not only do okay for yourself, but to make such a big difference in others' lives.
Well, honestly, it was hard at the beginning.
Yes.
I struggled through it. I had to seek help to deal with the stress of it. I returned back to work for several years full time, which helped, but just overall stress of that did finally overcome to a point where I am on disability now. But I can tell you what makes my life able to survive is my family, my friends, and my faith. Or really my faith, my family, and my friends. Let me put it that way. If it wasn't for my church family and my faith in God, my faith that He is the great healer, and that He healed me, and He's given me a purpose to stay here. First and foremost, I don't know how people make it through life's trials and tribulations and things without a solid church home and family. Because the night of my heart attack, people from my church were there.
Yes.
We go to a relatively large Baptist church, and our pastor and their wives were there the next morning, literally hours after my heart attack. Members of our Sunday school class were there hours after my heart attack at the hospital with my wife. I mean, so much support and outpouring from our church family was there immediately that next morning after the heart attack. Then my friends, all of them showing up there that night. One of them showed up at the hospital where they life-flighted me from. A former coworker was like, saw it on Facebook and was there for my wife. So it's so important to have a family and faith background. But I guess, and second foremost after faith is her. You
have each other.
If you go, this is the part that chokes me because I look at it and you go back and look at what my wife did and you see the Pray for Marion. If you go back and you read the daily posts, my wife never gave up on me. Even when my pastor's wife and her aunt, who happens to be a pastor's wife, came in and saw me, and they've been at so many deathbed situations way worse than, well, not as bad as mine, that weren't dead. And they all were like, she's in denial. But she never, ever, ever gave up on me.
Well, you
she
are
said,
so
even
blessed.
If he ever asked to come home and he's impaired, I don't care. Just let him come home.
Oh my
I
goodness.
I have to push him out in a wheelchair. I don't care if I have to feed him or walk him or whatever. They say till death do you part, to sickness and health and all that. Well, I couldn't have asked for a better partner to be with me.
Well, you are such a bright light in our community. Thank you for sharing your unbelievable testimony, your love for each other. I feel like we can all learn from you, from your situation and how to handle it just right. May God be with you and protect you and watch over you through this journey. And may you get the heart and just thrive with it. I certainly wish you nothing but the best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care. I want to follow up with you. Oh, go one more time.
It's just that I just always want to tell people, no matter what you're going through, be it a heart attack, be it cancer, be it a sick loved one, remember God's there. Pray.
Thank you for that.
Seek his guidance, and he'll get you through it, even if it's not the healing that you particularly may want. But he always does.
You got me tearing up. Well, thank you so much. Appreciate you so much. You guys take care of yourselves. And I want you to update me with what's going on with you. Okay. Stay in touch.
All right. Thank you so much.
Take care. And thank you all for being here for Lunch for the Soul. I hope to see you back here 12:30 next Wednesday. It's a place to be. I'll see you then. Have a beautiful day.